Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in Joshua, chapter 13. Now, we're kind of crossing over into a different phase. Remember, Joshua had three directives. He had three, you can say, his purpose. One was to bring the Israelites into the promised land, which he's done. And then there was he was to conquer the land, which he's done. And then now he is going to divide. So from here to the end of the book of Joshua, basically it's going to cover him dividing the land among the 12 tribes of Israel. Just to give you a little taste here, this is how this looks. If you look at the map, the Israelite, the land of Israel, as it skirts the Mediterranean Sea, but you also see like the Dead Sea, Sea of Galilee to the north, but you can see the one on the left, how it talks all the different areas that the tribes, Zebulun to the north there, Dan to the north. Then you look at to the west, okay, Reuben, Manasseh, or half tribe of Manasseh. Then you look at Simeon, Ephraim. There's just different, how some of it shows how some of the land is going to be divided up. And then, of course, remember on the other side of the Jordan, you had Gad, Reuben, and half a tribe of Manasseh settled on there. We'll get a little into that. But this is going to be just the all right, let's bring it up. Now, this is going to be, like I told you, the entire kind of span of Joshua is about 5 years. So when we looked at his conquest, again, you're looking at about a 5-year period of time. Look at verse 1. It says, now, verse 13, verse 1, chapter 13, verse 1 says, Joshua was now old, getting on in years. And the Lord said to him, you have become old, getting on in years, but a great deal of land remains to be possessed. This is the land that remains. Now, kind of interesting that when you read this, we will see a lot of this later on as we move forward into our studies in the different books, that all the districts of the Philistines and the Gershurites, from the Shihor east of Egypt to the border of Ekron on the north, considered to be Canaanite territory. The 5 Philistine rulers of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, as well as the Avites in the south, all the land of the Canaanites, from Iran, of the Sidon to the Aphek, I should say, and as far as the borders of the Amorites, the land of the Gibeonites, and all of the Lebanonites east of Baal Gad, below Mount Hermon, to the entrance of Hamath, all the inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon to Mezrah, all of the cities. Now, Israel, unfortunately, will never conquer these lands because of their sin. Okay, as he says, I will drive them out before the Israelites, only distribute the land as the inheritance for Israel, as I have commanded you. Therefore, divide the land as an inheritance to the 9 tribes and half tribes of Manasseh. Now, kind of interesting that he mentions 9 tribes. Why 9 tribes? One, the Levite, which is the priests, they don't have an inheritance. And then the other tribe is kind of unfolded into was now Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay. Um, so, but they still make up 12 tribes. Verse 8. With the other half of the tribe of the Reubenites, Gadites had received inheritance, Moses gave them beyond the Jordan of the east, just as Moses, the Lord's servant, had given them. So 9 on one side of the Jordan River, and then 2.5 tribes on the other side. Verse 9 from Ariel, okay, on the rim of the Arnon Valley, along with the city, in the middle of the valley of Medeba Plateau, and as far as Dibon. Again, apologies, butchering the pronunciation of these cities, or names, Hebrew names, really, what they come down to. Verse 10. In all the cities of Shihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, at the border of the Amorites, also Gilead, and the territory of the Gershons, and the Mechshons, and all Mount Hermon, and all the Bashan, the Selecon. I know I'm butchering these names, so forgive me. The whole kingdom of Og in Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and Edrei. He was one of the remaining Rephaims. Okay. Moses struck them down and drove them out, but the Israelites did not drive out the Gershonites and the Mechanites, the Mechadites. Okay. So Gershur and the Mechanite live in Israel to this day. He did not give any inheritance to the tribe of Levi. This was the inheritance. This was its inheritance, just as he had promised, the offerings made by fire to the Lord of Israel. Now, verse 15, now the tribe of the Reubenites, by their clans, Moses gave this territory from, and I'm just going to, we've read this, and I'm butchering it, so it kind of sounds worse than I'm making it out to be, so this, you can go back and read this from Arion, and then he goes on. And then I'm going to skip down to verse 22. It says, along with these Israelites put to death, they also killed the diviner Balaam, the son of Beor, with the sword. Now, he's kind of combining what had happened before, of course, Moses' death. So we saw this in the book of Numbers. Okay. And so he's so the son of, and it's kind of interesting because Balaam, there was about 3 chapters, I believe, or 4 chapters, 3 or 4. Remember that we spent on Balaam's prophecy, and even though he gave the prophecy, even though he obeyed, that he still gave bad counsel, sinful counsel, to cause Israel to sin and fall into fornication and idolatry. Alright, Gad's inheritance. The tribe of Gad, by their clans, Moses gave this as their territory. And again, you can go and read that. And I'm going to skip down to the end of verse 27. It says, their land also included the Jordan as this territory, as far as the east sea of Cherith and the east side of Jordan. This was the inheritance of the Gadites by their clan, with the cities and their villages. And then it says, and half the tribe of Manasseh, that is, the half tribe of Manasseh descended by their clans, Moses gave this as their territory. And then it goes on from Menahem through all of Bashan, all the kingdom of Og, the kingdom of the Bashan, including Jar's villages. I'm going to skip all of that. And then verse 32, these were the portion Moses gave them on the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan, east of Jericho. But Moses did not give a portion to the tribe of Levite, The Lord gave the Lord, the God of Israel, was their inheritance, just as He had promised them. So now, again, just so you remember that when they had conquered, before Moses died, he had conquered those lands, and then the Reubenites and Gad, tribe of Gad, and then half a tribe of Manasseh came to Moses and said, "Hey, this is a pretty good land over here. Look, we just want to inherit this." Now, at the time, Moses, if you remember, chided them and said, "Hey, you're trying to cause division." And remember, this was the kind of division that Israel, it caused us to wander 40 years in the wilderness. And they was like, no, we're not doing that. And they have agreed to send their fighting men to cross the Jordan and to fight with Israel. And he said, well, if you do that, we'll give you your land on this side. And just a couple of chapters, we're going to see that Joshua was going to release these fighting men back to go home, to cross back over on the, I think it's from their perspective, the west of Jordan. Chapter 14, verse 1 says, the Israelites received these portions that Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the head of the families of Israel tribes gave them in the land of Canaan. Their inheritance was by lot, as the Lord commanded through Moses, for the 9.5 tribes, because Moses had given the inheritance of the 2.5 tribes beyond the Jordan. But he gave no inheritance among them to the Levites. The descendants of Joseph became 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. No portion of land was given to the Levites except cities to live in, along with pasture land for their cattle and livestock. So the Israelites did as Moses commanded Moses, and they divided the land. So this kind of gives you a summation, of course. Now, all of those lands that I butchered, okay, kind of also, if you were to do kind of a plot survey, you would see where the borders of Israel, excuse me, lie. Okay, had they been faithful to the Lord, excuse me, they would have even gotten more land, and God would have preserved them. But as we will soon see, they won't. All right, verse 6 says, excuse me, the descendants of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgad, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenite, said to him, you know what the Lord promised Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the Lord's servant, sent me to Kadesh Barnea to scout out the land, and I brought back an honest report. My brothers who went with me caused the people's heart to melt with fear, but I remained loyal to the Lord my God. And on that day, Moses promised me the land where you have set foot will be your inheritance for you and your descendants forever, because you have remained loyal to the Lord my God. Now, he says, verse 10, as you see, the Lord has kept me alive these 45 years, as he has promised, since the Lord spoke this word to Moses while Israel was journeying through the wilderness. Here I am today, 85 years old. I'm still as strong today as I was the day Moses sent me out. My strength for battle and for daily tasks, it is now as it was then. Now give me the hill country the Lord promised me on that day, because you heard then that Anakim are there, as well as large fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me, and I will drive them out as the Lord promised. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, I'm going to pronounce this right, Jephunneh, okay, I know I butchered that, sorry, and gave him Hebron as an inheritance. Therefore Hebron belongs to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenite, as an inheritance to this day, because he remained loyal to the Lord, the God of Israel. Hebron's name used to be Karath Arba. Arba was the greatest man among Anakim. After this, the land had rest from war. So now, as I said, as we move into the next chapters, it's just going to be divisions. Okay, the divisions of the land. Okay, among the tribes. Okay, now this is interesting because now remember I said that the kind of span for the conquest was about 5 years. Okay, it's actually probably a little longer, and I'll get to that later. But in other words, what the story is focusing on about 5 years. But it's also going to go into the lifespan of Joshua. Joshua was around 60 years old when he came out of Egypt. Caleb, as you know, was 40 years old. So now he's, this 40-year span. And so now, and we're going to get more into his story a little later. There's a couple of interesting stories. Because his son-in-law, Othniel, will actually be one of the first judges, but we'll get to that later. What is interesting about Caleb is that Caleb, if you go back and remember the story, that Caleb and Joshua, about a year after, within going into a year, a year passed, or going into the year, God instructed Moses, go conquer the land. Had they obeyed, they would have been in that land 40 years prior. But the Israelites said, well, we should scout it out first. And when they did that, that was that. They sent 12 spies. 10 of them came back and said, we can't conquer the land. Joshua and Caleb, again at the time, with around Joshua being 60, Caleb being around 40, said, man, we can go and take this land right now. God is with us. They were overpowered by the 10 other leaders who gave a bad report. And then God promised that they would go into the promised land. So Joshua is making good on that promise. He's making good on that promise by Moses. What is interesting about Caleb is that he is 85, and he said, I'm just as strong as these young cats, right? I'm just as strong as I was when I'm 40. And he will drive out. We're going to see that he's driving out. The term Anakim was a giant. So he will drive them out. And again, he was very faithful to the Lord. So again, we'll see more on him later on, because as I said, his son-in-law will actually be one of the first judges when we get to the book of Judges. All right, guys. We'll pick it up at chapter 15 in the next study. I'll see you then.